I'm joined today by Mondli Makhanya, who's best described as an editor's editor, someone whose career spanned longer than my lifetime, 33 years.
35.
35 now. Well, your career is 4 years older than I am, but we're talking to you today, Mondli, as an Orlando Pirates supporter. That's the basis that you're sitting in the chair today. Welcome to the debrief.
Thank you. And I must correct you, there is no such thing as an Orlando Pirates supporter.
Okay.
Because a supporter is external.
Right.
Other people have supporters. We are
Orlando Pirates.
We are Buccaneers. Through it.
Explain this to me. Okay. I am someone who cannot understand the psychological construct of fandom. Why are you loyal to a team whose players are not loyal to? Players jump around teams. So why do people believe in what? A brand?
No, I think we cannot describe it as a brand. I think a sports team, a sports club is bigger than the people who are in management. It's bigger than the people who play for that particular team.
Why?
Because, those people who call themselves fans or supporters, let's just call it that, those people actually, the belief runs very deep. It is like asking somebody kind of like, why do you profess this particular faith? Why do you believe in that God?
But you get something out of those things, right? Even a political party, I get something from it. So what do I get from being Orlando?
A political party is also temporary. You can vote for the political party this year in 2025, and next year it's 2026, and this other political party offers you something else. You can change your political beliefs. But in a football club in particular, and I mean, people who support other teams, other sports, will tell you pretty much the same thing. That I think the closest thing to it is religion. That for 99% of people, you are unable to change your religion. Conversion is a no-no because it's at your core. It gives you something a lot more. It gives you a joy, and it gives you a comfort. It gives you a belief. And even when your team is not performing well, you would rather be in a state of depression than switch to another team because...
But you're definitely not in a state of depression because...
Orlando Pirates is flying at the moment.
But the thing that always interests me, and I'm a little bit jealous of it sometimes, the community that's formed around it, right? That you part to something that's so much bigger than yourself. When I watch people who are football enthusiasts, it almost gives me a sense of envy to want to be part of this elite club of sort.
I think you should begin now.
The
Become a Buccaneer right now,
and
I think you can share in the joy for now. You know what? So the really wonderful thing about it is, if I walk out onto the street wearing an Orlando Pirates t-shirt or an Orlando Pirates cap, and every Buccaneer kind of like at the mall or on the street or wherever I am recognizes this, and they all have something to say to me because we are one. I walk into a bar and the person at the bar, the barman may be an Orlando Pirates person, and we have something to talk about. And the discussion is never about the team, it's about we. Yeah, we are doing this. This is what we should do to correct this. And this is how our season is going. Our boys are ABCD. And it just transcends everything. And again, I go back to the fact that the closest thing you will get to it is so in my family, we're very hectic Catholics. And every Catholic family prays that at least one person in the family will become a priest, become a nun, or become a whatever. And so at some point, so there is a nun, kind of like one of in my grandfather's generation. There's a nun, and my mother nearly became a nun until my grandmother prayed hard that she doesn't become a nun, so she can kind of like, she sent her to school, become part of, like she's the eldest, so that she could educate the rest of the kids. So, but then my mother prayed that either my brother or I would become a priest. So I did try with becoming a priest, but
wow.
But there are certain things that priests cannot do,
which we shall not mention.
We shall not go into. But then, But I think if I can, when I think about why I became a journalist, I think I need to blame my grandfather again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my grandfather, I spent the first 10 years of my life living with my grandparents in a rural area in deep KZN, somewhere near, I think the nearest place to there is a town called Ikopo.
Yeah.
So
it's southern KZN.
Southern KZN. So my grandfather was the parish correspondent for Africa, which was the Catholic Church's newspaper. So when there were big occasions like the confirmations, etc., and when the bishop came to the area to do big events, my grandfather would be the one to write for Africa. So what he would do, then he would write the story and put it in the post, and it gets sent to Marion Hill. Obviously, someone types it out there because it was handwritten. It was a letter, and so it goes there, and then when Africa comes back to the parish and the parish community is reading there's this byline by Mondli Makhanya, and my family were all very proud that there was always this byline. I didn't know what a byline was then, but there was this name of my grandfather there. And I think that's what planted the seed. I think I wanted that. I think when I think back, I think that's where the seed came from. But then later on in the 1980s, where it crystallized of writing and my love of politics. And then
did you see anyone in that image at the time that looked like you?
So a lot of my heroes were journalists. I mean, So
like who?
Like President Ramaphosa was the person that
all of us.
So I wanted to be President Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
And I would read him every kind of every Sunday in City Press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did that generation have? Because there's this sense when I reflect about that generation of drum writers or elite Black African writers in the 80s, there was this dapperness to them that was cool. But obviously I come many years later, maybe 2 decades later. But at that time, what were they like in terms of perception to the world, or to at least to your world?
Well, they were the intellectuals of the community. I think that's the thing. So everybody, so they looked up. So there was the generation of the 50s. So they would look up to the guys of the 50s, and because they were the cool guys, and they got the girls, they got the drum generation was so recognized in communities, and they got the free booze.
Sophia Town was lit.
Yeah. And I think then you move on. I think in the 70s, then journalism became a very activist craft at that time, because the government was trying to shut down everything, and journalists were taking all the risks on telling the world about what was happening in communities, about the evil that apartheid was, and how it was actually cutting people's souls and livelihoods. And so the 70s and 80s, I think that's what journalism became, particularly in Black communities. And So if you were a young person at that particular time who was politically inclined and who was looking for answers, looking for information and looking for an activism that hurts the apartheid state, those people became kind of like a bad word, but became your celebrities. I mean, not quite the Brenda Fassies and Yvonne Chekachazas of that time, but they were our celebrities, and they went to jail for telling the truth via the various mediums. So I found myself kind of like looking up to people like Percy, looking up to people like even like people like Anton Haber, who was there. There's the Phil Molefe, Zola Sisulu, etc., etc. Those were names that some of my own friends and comrades didn't necessarily recognize, but I recognized them because I saw myself in the future being them.
And so, if you have to describe the last 35 years in one word, what would it be?
Joy, I think. When I started my journalism at the Weekly Mail, there was a man called Sean Johnson. He was one of the senior editors. He was the political editor there, and we were little trainees running around.
And this is pre 94.
This is beginning of 1990.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mandela is about to be free.
Yeah. And so I'm there, and there were various other people. Some are still in journalism, some are no longer most of my class is no longer in journalism now. So we spent 6 months in the classroom, and 3 months in the classroom, and then half in the classroom and out in the field. But one of our first, so we would get these senior editors coming to talk to us, and people from outside would come to talk to us. And this man called Sean Johnson came, and he said to us that journalism is the one profession other than sport or art where you are paid to enjoy yourself. Says, and the moment you stop enjoying yourself, that's when you should quit immediately. Once it becomes a job, then it's no longer for you. And in the last 35 years, at no point did I ever feel bored, kind of like stop enjoying myself. I have been through hard times. I've been in terrible situations and in dangerous situations, but every single day has been absolutely enjoyable. I mean, even amidst great frustrations, I've actually enjoyed every single day of my career.
And so let's rewind to that 1990 and the time when you started in the Weekly Mail. There's a name called Oscar Gumede. Tell us about Oscar Gumede. I was very fascinated, and I learned about the pseudonym you had from the IFP. I didn't know about it before. It was when the IFP had a bit of beef with you that this thing was raised. What was that?
It's gonna be edited.
Yeah.
So in the early years of my career, so I was at the Weekly Mail. Okay, you want to start this? In the early years of my career, I was in the Weekly Mail, and we're sitting with the seniors and trying to remember what was between the township comrades and the hostel dwellers who lived in one section of the township, a section of Kwamashu, and then there were informal settlements all around the township. And those informal settlements, obviously it was people newly arrived from the rural areas, and they were very loyal to Inkatha. And they would constantly be attacking the townships and would be defending we would be defending ourselves and etc. etc. And so I was just telling my colleagues and my bosses over social media, but like, oh, this is how I grew up. I mean, like, and it wasn't a fascinating story.
Yeah.
For me, it was just,
life.
Some people grew up just going to the movies. Some people are able to go to Switzerland to go ski. For us, every weekend, we were at a cemetery burying a comrade, and then immediately after the funeral, the cops had kind of like come to attack us, and then we clashing with the cops and the soldiers, the SADF at the time, and then more comrades die, and then next weekend we're back at the cemetery, and that was just a slice of life to just talking to them, and then like there was fascination among everybody there, and they persuaded me to actually write this as a story. But obviously this is early 90s. The war was still on in KZN and in around what was then Transvaal and parts of Mpumalanga. So, and apartheid was still there. So, yeah. So I wrote it under a pseudonym, and that pseudonym was Oscar Gumede, because one of my names is Oscar. Yeah. And at school I was known as Oscar. Yeah. And one of my clan names is Gumede.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that
yeah. So that was, and then I wore shades and
at the time.
No, kind of like so it was a front page story.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I wore shades, and I was like, you couldn't identify me. Yeah, it's like then My Life as a Comrade by Oscar Gumede.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
do you still have a copy of it?
I don't have it. The person who does have it, who kept it, was Anton Haber. So Oscar Gumede was unknown to the world until 2004. I'm appointed editor of, is the word I describe myself as this lowly newspaper man.
And it has become an institution.
So basically, throughout my careers, when I became an editor, so people then started just to refer to me as this lowly newspaper man. So wherever I've gone, I am this lowly newspaper man.
When you look back at all of this, is there anything you would have done differently?
No, I don't think so. I just think that perhaps, no, I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think I should have written several books by now.
Me and you are going to talk about that after we are done
but
here.
Like, that's the only thing I would have done differently. And then the only other thing that I think I should have done much earlier is the technological adoption. I think I should have been much more proactive in understanding the technology that would one day catch up with us.
Because you are at a very interesting place. You come from this rich history of traditional journalism, and now you are sort of leading a process where a traditional newspaper becomes a digital outfit, which is, for me, not that controversial and not that sad. It's life, the evolution of the way people consume information. But given the rapid developments, you wrote about it when last year when you announced that City Press is going digital, that the internet and its progenies, that you made that reference, will continue to evolve, and so the media has to keep up to that. How do you feel about where journalism is in that context of this rapidly evolving technological landscape?
Yeah. Let's say, I do think that we should have been much more proactive as an industry in keeping up with the times. The past 20 years, I think, have been for humanity probably the most rapid, have seen the most rapid advances in technology in the way we do things. And when the cell phone came around when the cell phone arrived in South Africa, I think it was probably around 93, 94. And it wasn't that old elsewhere in the world. And it seemed like this huge thing, and it was this massive innovation, and it was big, and we thought that this is the big thing. But then there was soon the next big thing, and the next big thing, and the next big thing. Find the cell phone still remains a constant. It changes in size, it changes in the level of what's in it, and what it can do. But it's still the one constant. And I think that we should have, as a media industry, and I can only speak for the media industry in this country,
that what people did was they confused something. They confused journalism and the media.
Yeah.
Journalism survived,
exactly.
But the medium was always going to evolve, and the pie just got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what are we in the business? What is the business of news? What is the business of newspapers? The business of newspapers is news. I mean, like, we're not just producing newspapers. It was just the medium was the newspaper. The medium was the radio. The medium was television. So news, journalism was what we do. And journalism is, regardless of how we do it, we continue to do it. And what the technology does, it enables you to do it so much better.
So you're optimistic quicker. Or are you pessimistic about where we are, given Elon Musk, and the age of Donald Trump and the attack on mainstream media, legacy media? Do you think things are going to get better?
Look, I'm excited about what there are proven examples that digital journalism can work around the world. I mean, like large newspapers, large traditional newspapers like the New York Times and Financial Times, etc., have shown that you can transition. Yes, they still retain their print editions, but at some point, but those are becoming less and less important to their business model. But they are still doing great journalism in the manner and delivering the journalism in the manner that they're doing so. And their reach is so much larger. Everybody in the world now has access to their journalism. Same with us here. So many more people in the world have access to the journalism that a City Press or a Sunday Times or a News 24 does than would have been previously been the case. So delivering news internationally, globally, and locally has just become a lot more seamless. And the thing about it is there are so many new tools, ways to do things that my staff are able to use now. That kind of like, it wasn't as easy 5-10 years ago, when it was the writer and his laptop and the photographer and his camera. But now there is so much more that can be done.
I'm excited about where we are. In a sense that liberation movements will eventually lose their luster.
Yeah. I was fortunate to have been in Zimbabwe. I spent a lot of time in Zimbabwe in 2000, when the mess that Zimbabwe is in was basically kicking in. The land invasions were happening. The autocracy of of Mugabe and ZANU-PF was coming to the fore. The repression was beginning to really kind of like, the systemic repression was beginning to kick in. and the economy was tanking, and the legitimacy of ZANU-PF was going down the drain, and being there, covering the land invasions, covering that process, there was a parliamentary election in June of that year, just gave me a glimpse of what could possibly happen in South Africa. I was able to see how a liberation movement can become so arrogant and out of touch with
rogue, essentially.
Yeah. And how it can believe that it actually owns the people, and that the people will always support it. And I mean, Jacob Zuma did put it that way until Jesus comes, and that basically was what ZANU-PF believed. There was one ZANU-PF bigwig at the time who said, in one particular province, like I think Masvingo province, says there, we can even put a baboon up as a candidate in a constituency. People will still come and vote for us. And that's
but that was the arrogance of the ANC.
Yeah,
in Zuma
no,
years.
exactly. So basically, I got a sense there that I got the thing with, like, I could see where the ANC was going, because those tendencies were creeping into the ANC. Yes, it wasn't becoming repressive and what. One thing I will give the ANC is its devotion to constitutionalism, loyalty to constitutionalism. Although it's not always
front and center.
Yeah, but so it gave, in as much as I could see that the ANC would at some point kind of lose touch with the masses and head for its demise. I still had the South African exceptionalism that no, we would never go the way of Zimbabwe.
But that's something that when I engage with business people, when I engage with other people from around the world, I have an optimistic view about South Africa around the GNU, and people kind of perceive it to be, you drunk on this on the moment, the political moment of this GNU, Government of National Unity. But how I construct it is that there was all the excuse for the ANC to grab power, to not concede an election. We see manifestations. Mozambique is, a 6-hour journey from where we're sitting here, and you see what is happening there. And so that you have a governing party that can concede that it lost a majority, and then go to its enemies and barter with power. Yes, there's so many things wrong, and there's so many things that will test the strength of the GNU. But the fact that you withstood a critical moment, for me, gives me optimism for the next 30 years.
No, exactly. I mean, like, that maturity was huge of the ANC to actually say, we're at 40%. There was always, they were 40%, and therefore we are not able to govern alone. And let's accept that the people have rejected us. And the ANC said it over and over again. There is a however, though. And my however is that in 2016, when the ANC lost power in the metros in Gauteng, there was a huge inability to accept that loss of power. And the lords of the ANC at those levels went out of their way to be disruptive of those governments. They tried to mobilize protests against those governments, and there were numerous successive votes of no confidence. They wanted to destabilize the local government that was not in their hands. And it happened in other smaller towns as well. So that gave me a worry about what would happen when the ANC did lose power at national level. And so here's my however. And my however goes back to December 2017.
Yeah.
That had the other ANC, the Zuma side of the ANC, won at Nasrec 2017. And you had people like Ace Makashule and those rogues being in full control of the ANC going forward from 2017 onwards, particularly 2019 elections, etc., etc. What was going to be the culture of the ANC, and what was going to be the reaction of that ANC in 2024 when the ANC lost? I mean, it's a philosophical question.
Yeah.
So the ANC that was triumphant in 2027, the ANC that was triumphant in 2017, yes, it wasn't a full victory for the Ramaphosa side, but at least it was able to provide direction in a certain way, and there was a consolidation of that ANC.
And the constitution still has a place.
Yes, the constitutionalists basically came out on top. So I think it was important that December 2017 moment did not go the other way. I think we were on a precipice, and we missed falling into the ditch, and we were able to turn the vehicle around and make it go on a better road.
Even though it's driving really slowly.
Yeah. So and I think that what happened in winter of 2024 was such a huge signal. And I think I fully share your optimism. And it was a signal to the continent, to the world, that actually there is an African country where a liberation movement does not manipulate, does not steal, does not being rejected by the voters.
And so does the GNU survive or collapse in your view?
I firmly think that the GNU is going to survive.
Maybe in this iteration or in some iteration?
No, I think this iteration will survive. I think it's in the interests of everybody. Everybody wants it to work. The ANC needs it to work because it keeps the ANC still has a commitment to making South Africa work. It's not doing a great job of it, but there is a sense among Ramaphosa is not the best leader that the country can have at this point. He's not the most effective, but he is able to keep us ticking in the correct direction. There are ministers there in his leadership who in cabinet on the ANC side who actually are doing some quite positive things and that have got the country to where we are in the past 8 months or so. And the DA also wants it to work. The DA got a taste of national power, and it is able to prove that we have the capacity in our ranks to actually run big ministries and achieve successes, and which is why it's so loud in pronouncing on successes, no matter how small, or whether it's their successes or cumulative successes from past.
And I keep making the point that the DA and the ANC are closer than you think, in terms of whether it's economic policy, but they're not as far away as you think.
Yeah, in all the calculations and formulations of a possible coalition after last year's hung election, this was the most natural one. Yeah, because policy-wise, they actually share a lot of the common ground. They are centrist in nature, the two of them. Yes, ideologically, the ANC may still spew the whole thing of the National Democratic Revolution. But if you actually look at the policies that the ANC government has been put in place over the past 30, how old are we? It's 31 years now. Those policies, as you say, are not very far from or where the DA is at, and they are not very far from policies that any mainstream liberal stroke social democratic government anywhere in the world would actually implement. Put aside kind of like all those fancy resolutions that come out of ANC conferences, kind of,
and
like
also put aside the DA's
noise.
Yeah.
I mean, like the DA's problem right now is a, use the word, maybe it's an existential thing, a fear of losing its core constituency should it be seen to be bowing, should it be seen to be bowing to the ANC's dictates. And it makes noises around things that actually should be making noises around.
And in a democracy that's noisy it's not a bad thing.
No, but you know what? I think it keeps creating this notion that it and the ANC in the GNU are uncomfortable bed partners.
And they're not.
They're not. And I think that the posturing is unnecessary.
And for me, the image that sums that up was Ramaphosa, John Steenhuisen greeting the Chinese president in Beijing. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's just like, and seeing Steenhuisen beaming on that stage. And do you think he's going to want to give that up?
So I'm going to mention names and concepts. And the first thing that comes to your mind, you say it, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with Jacob Zuma. And you just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Maggot-ridden.
Ramaphosa.
Non-existent.
Gaza.
Tragic and traumatic.
Africa.
Hopeful but betrayed by its leaders.
Thabo Mbeki.
Possibly the best president we've ever had and will have in a long time. But he was doing the wrong things. The people of South Africa resisted Mbeki's policies and actually overturned his policies. When Jacob Zuma was in power, the people of South Africa kind of like, when Jacob Zuma was in power and he was taking us down a very, very, very terrible, rocky and dangerous road, the people of South Africa said, we don't want that. And they took to the streets, and ANC itself rejected that version of itself. And today, the people of South Africa are rejecting even the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa. Yes, there are some who have embraced Jacob Zuma, believing that kind of like the things were better under him. And obviously the reemergence of ethnic stuff empowered that. But the people of South Africa said, look, this ANC cannot rule us, govern us until Jesus returns. And they've freed themselves of the liberation movement. And that gives me great optimism.
And finally, what makes you stay awake at night?
I worry a lot about I worry a lot about the fact that we are going in the same direction as European nations around the issue of immigration. I worry that there might be another conflagration around that matter.
And so xenophobia is taking over.
Yeah. And that the leadership of the country is not recognizing that people are not just simply xenophobic, but that actually kind of like they feel the pressure of kind of like of the preponderance of immigrants in their communities. We who live in the suburbs and in the neighborhoods do not feel that pressure immediately. And we are not doing anything as a country at this point to avoid a repeat of what happened in 2008 and what happened kind of like, I think 2015 and there've been repeated returns of that xenophobic conflagration. So that for me is the big fear. We don't want that. We are in such a good space at this point, in a positive space in this country. The lights are on most of the time.
I had no water yesterday.
Same with me. But the mood in the country is great at the moment. The mood in the country is positive. There's a sense that we are going somewhere good, and you don't want something that sparked that can give us the wrong headlines again.
Mondli Makhanya, thank you so much for joining me today on the debrief. I appreciate it. You have lit the way for so many of us, and I don't think many of us get to say this to you and your generation of the role that you've played in pioneering the way for us, not only as young journalists, but also as just young South Africans, and giving us a view of what can be. And for that, I am eternally grateful.
Thank you. I am humbled by what you just said. But just on that note, I'm always very excited by the emergence of the next generation. When the next generation walks into our newsrooms and I see the brightness and that, like, you know what, when we get out of the way, or we get out of this mortal coil, that South African journalism will still be going strong, and there will be courage, there will be quality, and there will be excitement. I think, people in generations of in any profession, but it happens obviously in our profession. People say, in my day, in my time, but actually I look the other way and I actually see a lot of brightness and a lot of leadership happening. It's right in front of me.
Thank you very much. And that's the debrief. If you like this podcast, please share it and consider subscribing to us at www.thedebriefnetwork.com.